So we're going to do a panel on the future of selling travel, because the past of selling travel has been pretty interesting. Starting like in the mid 1900s, Sabre was put together by IBM and then became, yeah, and actually that's how a lot of people still sell travel now. But the GDSs are pretty cool. But we've gone from very manual selling to now on Tour Radar. You can just say, I want to go to China, and you can book now, and you can save money, presumably. It's really cool.
Presumably.
So yeah, we're going to do a panel with a few people who know a lot about what selling travelers look like and what it's going to look like in the future. I'll just introduce our great moderator, Christian, who is the North American Managing Director of Tour Radar, and he'll introduce our great panelists. So thank you to our panelists, and thanks everybody.
Thanks, Max. Appreciate that. Well, thanks for coming to the panel, guys. I'd first like to introduce Manuel. You've come all the way from Switzerland. It's nice to have you here. We don't often get someone from another country. So you are the CEO of Nezasa. Did I pronounce that correctly? Nezasa. There, I should have practiced that a bit more. We spent all our time talking about sailing and not how to pronounce your company names, so that's the problem. But they basically solve a big solution, and it allows companies to package hyper-personalized adventures and experiences. And I'm gonna give you an opportunity to explain what you do more. And then Janice, you're with Groupdesk. You're working on something that is, I think, a bit of a holy grail. It's trying to make the group booking a lot easier. I've only personally booked a group of students once in my life, and it was the biggest headache I've ever had in my life. To know that there's someone and a company that's working on that technology is absolutely incredible. So I think just to start off, it would be great to know, this is the future of travel that we're talking about. And are we having a little dead mic situation? So since we're talking about the future of travel, and you guys are both vested in your companies and you're creating solutions, why did you jump into this particular solution, this particular area? Because maybe start off with you, Manuel, because you were not in the travel industry, and I guess you started up around 2012, and now you're heavily into the travel industry. So I'd love to know a little bit more what got you in it and why you think your solution's so important and we need it.
Well, the reason why I got into this is basically because two reasons. I was working in tech before, and then we actually did a project for a travel company, and we found out how bad the state of travel tech was back in 2012 in a lot of operators. But the second thing is really that also as a consumer, as an end customer, it was pretty easy to see how difficult and how much of a pain it was to plan and book a personalized journey. And this is something that we just wanted to make simpler for everyone. And this is why in the end, we got drawn more and more into this topic, and then at some point said, okay, let's found a company and solve it for real.
So what specific solutions, what is your company truly doing?
We have a technology that allows the real-time planning and booking of personalized itineraries, so you can, both for agents and end customers, they can go in, they can completely personalize all aspects of the trip and then booking in one transaction. And now we're actually working towards distributing this over the whole travel life cycle. So we want to make it possible, and actually a big part of it is already possible today, that somebody can book a part of a trip now and then keep adding products, keep changing things, both pre-departure and post-departure, until actually the end of their trip. So we want to create itineraries that are actually alive until you stop traveling, and that you don't have to book once and then they're static for the rest of the time.
Great. Thank you. Janice, tell us a little bit about why you're in your current business and what you guys do.
Yeah, so we, my co-founder Alex and I, we came from within the sector. We had run tour operators, we had done wholesale divisions, and we kept coming back to this idea that if we could solve for our pain point around making a tour registration, or travel registration for group travel simpler, better, and help it, we like to joke, join the 21st century, that not only could we help a lot of people in our backyard, G Adventures, I'm going to come talk to you folks after, but that our former companies would have scaled just so much faster. We've all organized a cousin's wedding or a bachelor or bachelorette, and all of us have had that experience. You're like, it's 2019. Surely there has to be a better way. And so that's what we seek to solve, is to make group travel, corporate, leisure, and everything in between simpler and join the digital age.
Excellent. You know, the question I have here, and I'm going to just phrase it a little bit differently. You know, in the last 5 years, what have you seen as the biggest changes in the industry that you've perceived? And I'll open it to both of you.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of things that are changing, but I think what has really changed in the last 5 years is that a lot of product has actually become live bookable. So 5 years ago, it was very difficult to book anything other than maybe a hotel and a flight in real time. And now actually a lot of products, also more of those products that I mentioned before, is actually online and available and is basically waiting to get connected in some sort.
Yeah, and I would add to that the information asymmetry that existed 5 years ago between supplier and traveler, or even supplier and travel planner, is gone. And so because product is live and living today, your relationship with the product is not reliant on an intermediary who knows something you don't know as an end traveler. And so the role of the intermediary, whether that's a travel planner, whether that's a group organizer, has shifted. And so I think that's the big change that we're seeing happen today.
Do you think it's easier to book travel than it has been before? And I'll phrase this where, a couple years ago when I was in university, it's about 2 years ago, but when I wanted to go on a Euro trip, I strolled, and you'd appreciate this, Janice, I went down to Travel Cuts right into the center of my campus and asked for a Eurail pass and a flight to Greece and a flight out in Germany, and I bought a Let's Go Europe book, and away I went. Now there's a lot of stuff online, and it is easy to book, but it's also very complex to sift through. Do you think it's easier to be a traveler in 2019, or has it gotten a little bit more complicated?
I would think, I also graduated 2 years ago, and they gave me a paper ticket. I don't know what that was about. So I think it's certainly become easier to facilitate the booking, certainly. It's the easiest it's ever been. I certainly, and I'm a pretty savvy traveler and industry person, I find it overwhelming. So the information is there. So for travelers, we're left to curate a lot of that ourselves today still. And so the curation of that experience, again, I would rock up to a Travel Cuts in Waterloo, and the nice person there curated it for me, because there was this information asymmetry. And so I think the booking is the easiest it's ever been. It will continue to get easier. The choice is overwhelming.
Yeah, the choice is overwhelming, and I actually also have the impression that availability gets more and more difficult. So you basically need the new possibilities that you have, because otherwise when you just would travel the way we traveled like 2 years ago when you graduated, you would arrive there and not find a single free hotel room because it's already taken, and I think that was different a while ago.
Now, I think we can argue that, value, because a lot of intermediaries are maybe not as involved, or, a lot of value has shifted to the customer. But has that made it easier or more difficult for travel companies themselves rather than the travelers?
Well, for travel companies, it's definitely more difficult than before because you kind of have to prove your value in a different way. But on the other hand, I think it always also opens up a lot of opportunities when markets change, and basically if you're able to cater to those needs of the new travelers actually faster and better than most others, then you can also profit from all of those changes.
Yeah, I think certain things remain true. If you have great customer service and put the traveler first, you have always thrived and you will continue to thrive. I think the additional piece is, does your traveler see you as someone who can curate something personalized to me when I walk in, and do I feel heard? I think those folks have always won, and I think they'll be the ones to continue to win.
Great. Distribution hasn't necessarily kept up with technology. I think when we did a distribution event a few months ago, and we talked a little bit about the GDSs, the global distribution systems that are out there. And obviously they came into play much earlier than a lot of technology in other industries because travel agents needed access to supply to book travel for their customers. But it's kind of kept a bit of a legacy system in there and potentially has been a bit of a roadblock. But do you think that'll change? Like, will people always rely on GDSs? Or what's your sort of vision of the future when it comes to distribution? Maybe Janice, you want to start this one?
So those of us who have been in travel for more than about 6 months, you've probably read 2 articles already that hearken the death of the GDS. It comes up about every quarter. I think those are not necessarily untrue, but they're somewhat myopic. And so I think anybody who's saying, my travel startup is going to kill the GDS, I'd want to make sure you've validated that a little bit. These are pretty stationary organizations that have survived 30, 40 years. So that's the first thing, is if you're going to disrupt us, you really have to understand who makes money when as part of the GDS ecosystem. That's the first thing. The second thing is there's new fun things coming out like NDC, and people, I'll say the word, people say blockchain will do things there. It still remains to be seen. Please don't say blockchain to me after. But I think the exciting thing about the GDS is that the ones that are leading the charge, Amadeus, I wouldn't sleep on their ventures division, are really embracing technology. So if you're building something that is adjacent to the GDS, I would actually look to work with them as early as you can. They're reasonably to very friendly with their APIs, and they want to learn from this community. And so I think we have to prepare for both a world in which the GDSs are markedly different, perhaps in 5 or 10 years or even a generation, but we also have to prepare for the world in which they win and continue to win and are pretty central to a lot of businesses in Canada and certainly globally.
So personally, I think that it doesn't really matter whether somebody's called a GDS or not. We will always need those companies and platforms that make product accessible in an easy way. And if it's those like today's GDS companies or those companies who are the biggest hotel distributors today, or actually new companies, in the end, everybody wants a lot of product accessible to good prices, and whoever is going to provide that will do business.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. It's more of maybe a marketing question, but it is about the future of travel. And I just recently read a report from Skift about millennial travelers and Gen Z, and they broke it out between old millennials, young Gen Z, old Gen Z. So millennials are sort of in there, starting to hit their late 30s on the old side. And it was interesting that they talked about sustainability. And I know, Janice, you worked for We for a while, so you probably have some thoughts about this. In general, what surprised me was that they surveyed the population, and they basically got a result saying that 68% of millennials and Gen Z, they want to only book with companies that have sustainable practice. But then when they asked the same question, will you pay more? There was about a 13% discrepancy between the two. So how are companies, are they going to have to fake it and kind of do some greenwashing? Or are they going to, how are they going to pay for these programs that obviously are very expensive? Or is that just the cost of business offering travel in 2019?
Shall I go first?
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I don't care.
This is
it. We practiced, I promise. I think, the greenwashing's happening now, if we're going to be really candid. And we know that. People in the industry know that that's happening. When I think of sustainability, certainly as a traveler, I think there's a couple of different lenses. There's certainly the ecological sustainability. I think a lot of travelers are also, do you have a wage gap in your employees? Do you have diversity and inclusion programs? So I think sustainability is broadening as a definition, and certainly people want to spend their dollars perhaps supporting things that are not just environmental direct impacts. it's interesting. I certainly anecdotally, yeah, people don't want to pay, but they don't want to have a negative impact. So I think in terms of the product, people who will win there is how do you win on price? And necessarily, it's not a race to the bottom, but how do you win on value tied to price, but also something that is not greenwashing, that is genuinely positively impactful. I think travelers want that. I also, as a traveler myself, I think the lens of sustainability and where I spend my travel dollars will grow in definition too.
Yeah, I think some parts of sustainability are easier, or at least, let's say, possible to solve. For example, if you want to encourage more responsible behavior in the destination, that can actually also improve the experience in some cases, and it doesn't really have to make things more expensive. On the other hand, when it comes to things like climate impact, I mean, everybody says that we should do something, but when they would have the possibility to actually, when they book a flight, also pay something to some, carbon offsetting program, then usually they don't do it anymore. So there, I think it gets more difficult because it hits the wallet, and people are unfortunately still not willing to do that. So it really depends on which type of sustainability you talk about.
It might be, in the last week, a bunch of hotel chains and companies have said, oh, we're going to stop the single-use toiletries, the mini bottles, because that's a huge hit on plastic. So that might be enough for some travelers. If that's you, you're like, yeah, I will choose a different property who chooses to do that one thing. A lot of the cruise companies are, by 2020 or 2025, getting rid of plastic straws. That might be enough. So I think the what is sustainability bar is going to widen for travelers. It used to be a pretty high bar, and then therefore greenwashing happened, because it was almost, it was hard to maintain a margin with the perceived expectations of travelers. But I think there'll be something for everyone depending on your personal definition of that word.
Sort of under the same theme, and it's kind of a common topic in a lot of travel conferences that I've been going to, is over tourism. Can technology, in your honest opinion, solve that problem, or is it just driving more people into destinations that already have too many people, or is there a way that technology can kind of solve some of those issues?
It's a difficult question, honestly. I don't know.
There is a correct answer.
I don't know. I mean, of course, by offering more possibilities to actually go off the beaten tracks, you can somehow distribute the flow of tourists more, which can actually solve over tourism in some places, but then again, maybe flood more tourists into other places that were more pristine before. So is it better or worse afterwards? I don't know, to be honest.
I think it's certainly the holy grail of the industry for about 10 years has been solving that, and how do you get people on shoulder seasons and all these things that if you can figure out, you could probably get $1 million tonight. I would say there's kind of a couple interesting trends happening that I think in 10 years we could be closer to solving for over-tourism. The first one is this issue of sustainability. So someone might decide not to go to Venice today because it's over-tourismed to the nth degree. So that might just be the lens that they decide to not go to Venice, is that they don't want to contribute to the foot traffic there. So that's one. I think the other trend with over-tourism and the kind of macro economy is the rise of flexible work, the rise of freelance work and self-directed work will allow people to genuinely go in the true off seasons, whereas before, that was a nice idea and 5% of the population could do that. With the rise of flexible work, you could potentially go to Bali in a true off season and take advantage of that, not contribute to over-tourism and still have that experience. So I think that won't happen tomorrow, it won't happen in 5 years, but I do think in 10 years we could see some of that happening.
Well, and definitely more dynamic pricing models basically do that by definition, because people will book when it's cheaper, it's when there are less people in the destination.
Yeah, no, it's one of those ones that, to Radar, we work a lot with tourism boards, because, for anyone that's been selling Peru has had this issue for over 15 years or maybe 20 years with the Inca Trail, for example. That Inca Trail is always overcrowded and there's only so many permits handed out, and Peru would just love to sell you different parts of their country and are enticing people to go there. So that's kind of where we're trying to highlight some different areas and things that could be quite interesting and exciting. But at the end of the day, it's got to be Instagram worthy too. So it's kind of that balance. Okay, shift gears a little bit again. I'd like to talk a little bit about big data, and as it is a tech conference, so we want to chat a little bit about. There's a bit of a divide on the good and the bad of technology and data, and that could primarily be. In one part, it's like, well, we use technology to manipulate people into buying our products, whether it's good products or not. Similar to on a larger example of what it's doing to like U.S. elections and things like that, versus basically using technology to create the right product or the perfect product for the customer. Do you think there is a divide? Do you think what's your sort of take on the whole thing?
Well, I mean, the first point, yeah, you could argue that you could basically use technology to trick people into buying. So we're not a B2C seller, so we're not directly involved in that game. But I think the second point is definitely something where you can provide a lot of value, because if you actually start working with data, you can support the travelers a lot during the planning and booking of their trip. You can give them meaningful recommendations. You can help them actually solve that problem of way too much information, overwhelming information, and you can filter it down to stuff that's really relevant. And I think here it can actually have a and it will actually have a very positive effect, and it will become way more common to use that over time.
Yeah, I think for us, we're a B2B platform, and our goal is to use the data we have to make our clients, tour operators, and anybody who deploys group travel to the market, group travel inventory, better at their jobs. And so you don't have to figure out macro trends of what people are traveling to Costa Rica and what average groups are and departures and typical cancellations. We're going to actually help you do that. So I think we are using our data to make you as an operator, airline, property, smarter what you're doing. So you don't have to go figure out the macro trends. We're going to help you do that.
Great, that's very thoughtful. What would you think is like the biggest for you, the biggest lookout trend in technology when it comes to travel? Is it bots? Is it AI? Is it virtual reality? Whatever, if there's one thing that we should say, look out, in the next couple of years, this is going to have a huge impact on us as folks that are in the travel industry.
I mean, I don't think that blockchain will be that technology, so I'm with you on that. I think AI will definitely become way more important, because when we talked about before, it will definitely be used for supporting people with their decisions and showing relevant data, and I think that will become way more common over the next few years.
Yeah, I think for sure AI is something that we don't talk enough about, even though we talk a lot about it. I think blockchain is just understood. I know it's a bit misunderstood. People throw it around a lot, but I think AI is the true power in our industry. Certainly in the next 5 years, I think we're going to see really cool things. I think bots have a place. I think they haven't found their place yet, or the place where they worked perfectly. I think as an industry, we're trying a lot, which is good, but I don't think we've hit the silver bullet of where do you deploy a bot in the life cycle of a customer. I think the big one for me is kind of trends is whoever can figure out at scale to deliver customized luxury product to an older and younger millennial generation. And I don't mean luxury like 5-star. I don't mean luxury like $500 a night. The broader definition of what that generation is looking at is luxury. That person, that intermediary, whoever it is going to win, because they're buying higher end stuff than their two previous generations, Gen X, or you follow. but I don't think we've figured out what technology to support them doing that. So if I want to buy a business class flight and stay in a hostel, who's talking to me today? And is someone serving up a bot that I can do both of those seemingly very disparate experiences?
Do you think people in the luxury category will book online, continue to book online, or do they still want a personal experience with a human being to guide them through the whole booking process?
I think my intuition is both. So I think if it's the bucket list safari, that's a significant investment, generally speaking. You want to speak to an expert. And that's more, so I think it'll be destination specific, potentially some demographic. But I mean, we booked our honeymoon, full disclosure, online. I didn't speak to someone, and we took a month ticket around the world. And so I think that's actually going to become more of the trend, where folks like us are deploying, these big seminal moments in our lives. We've put some budget against it, and we've had a curated experience online. We've had maybe an interaction with a bot or some AI that's been really thoughtful. We don't necessarily need to speak to a human. I think the lift on the luxury end is when I get to the property or I check in for my business class flight, the onus is even more on them. They can't rely on this beautiful experience from 2 months before. They've really got to step up their game on property.
Yeah, I think the really high-end luxury will probably stay concierge-based and personal for a very long time, but the premium segment, there is no reason why not a big part of it could actually be done online in the future.
So we have a lot of startups that attend this event. You guys are involved. If you could give one piece of advice for someone just starting out in the travel industry, in the tech side of things, what would be your big piece of advice? It doesn't have to be one thing, but whatever you think you should throw, send them off with some good advice on.
So in Toronto, there's actually some huge established, thriving travel companies that maybe if you're in, and this is self-serving because I came from some of those, but if you're in the startup community, it can be really easy to dismiss them and say, like, they're relics, they're going to be dead in 5 or 7 years or 2 years. They're doing really cool stuff, but they're turning these huge cargo ships, so they have to go about an inch a year. I would say if your business is adjacent or additive to them, figure out a way to get to them early. Some of them have formal ventures arms, some of them have ability to give you pilots that could change your business. Figure out a way to play, or certainly at least learn from them earlier. They've survived countless recessions. They have figured out the GDS. They figured out the consortiums. Figured out a way to at least learn from them and glean information earlier instead of figuring it out. Travels, certainly in Ontario, is regulated in a particular way, and the earlier you can learn from the people who have mastered millions of dollars of companies, the better you will be served.
Yeah, I also think you should definitely start in closed markets. I mean, travel is a global business. It's many things that you do you can later roll out globally, but it's always good to start in your own markets, figure them out, and then later figure out the differences of the other markets in comparison with the one in which you started out.
So it's going to be my last question, then I'll open it up to the crowd. But generally, what are you guys looking forward? What kind of makes you excited about being in travel and in technology in 2019, and hopefully is going to be coming down the pipe soon?
Well, I definitely think it's a very interesting time because a lot of stuff will change over the next few years, and we all don't really know what it will be. We all have, we all think we might know, but we don't really do, and I think it will be very interesting of how that whole sector will actually change over the next years.
Yeah, I would add to that, it's a great time to be the traveler. We have full price parity online versus walking into a retail outlet. People are starting to understand what curation and customization really means for every demographic and interest. So if you want a very particular trip, it can be served up to you pretty easily. I think also, we don't know what's going to win in 5 years. The GDSs might be bigger and badder. They might be very different. There might be new players who are new GDSs. So I think it's a great opportunity and time to start in travel tech. And the established companies want to learn from this community. They're looking for people to help bridge their technology gaps and help them understand how to better serve their existing customer base.
Great. Now we'll open it up to you guys. Do you have any questions? Over there.
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Kerry. Nice to meet you. It's pretty good discussion on the state of travel. My question is, what do you see from your day-to-day is the biggest challenge as far as organizations are facing when it comes to traveling?
Well, one of the challenges is definitely a changing customer expectations and behavior. So we already talked about the different generations, and there are generations coming up that are expecting different types of services and different types of things, and that means that basically the travel provider landscape will have to adjust to those customer expectations, and that's definitely a big challenge.
Yeah, I would just add to that, there's new customers coming up, but some core tenets of how you serve a customer, how you curate experience remain to be true. So I think not swinging the pendulum the other way and abandoning the core things that have always served customers well, even with the big computer in 1960s, it's still, there's some core tenets, so not to abandon those, I think is the play.
I think that, the biggest challenge too could be that we're, in the travel industry, you're compared to every other industry online. So if they're getting served in 3 seconds, buying a computer at Apple or something, we have to do the same thing, and it's tough because we always had a bit of luxury to take a bit of time to serve up travel. Now people want instant bookability. It doesn't matter if it's a surfing camp in the middle of Brazil or whatever, you have to serve that up really fast.
Hi, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I've had the opportunity to travel to 65 countries. I'm not a lowest price shopper, I'm a value shopper. And I just went to New York this past weekend, and I love using Travelfish and Travelocity and a whole variety of tools, Skyscanner, Expedia, et cetera, et cetera. This was the first time that I had hidden charges on both my flight, $60 to check a check-in, not a check-in bag, but an overhead bag, which was not disclosed during the booking. And as well, the hotel had hidden charges that were only levied once I checked out. I'm finding that this is becoming more of a trend, and I'm wondering, in your experience, are there any sites that are actually honest today where they'll give you the full all-in price instead of just hiding the hidden charges?
Manuel, do you want to?
I know it's a tough question, but...
Well, I mean, it definitely depends on which type of product you book. The thing is really, if you book just a flight, then the trend goes rather in the other direction, like disassembling the product more and more, because they do the money with the ancillaries and not with the base price. And with the base price, they just basically have to fish for customers on meta search. So whenever you start with meta search, there is a pretty big chance that you end up with hidden charges. When you start with the actual providers, then you have a better chance of not falling into that trap. But it's, especially with flights, it's getting difficult.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is there's an interesting battle brewing between Airbnb and the OTAs of how they've decided to display flights or booking fees versus not. I think who's going to be a victor is still to be seen. I think Focusrite and Skift had some interesting articles in the last 6 weeks, if you want to Google it, of what Airbnb is doing, and they're not loving it against the traveler today as a bit of a standoff with the OTAs to see who blinks first. So yeah, I think for sure meta search, you're going to get snookered into that every time a little bit.
Hi, my name is Wayal. If you want honesty, come to me. I own a travel agency. I've organized tours all over the world. After this, I have clients I got to meet. So people, they book with me because of the honesty, the emotional side of travel. I still believe travel is emotional. It's about a story, it's about a dream, it's about journeys. I have clients with all kinds of situations. They don't care about sustainable sometimes. They care about, I have a terminal illness, I'm dying 1 year, I want to travel. So how do I bring that or transport that into online? Whoever has an answer, you come talk to me.
I think, and certainly some of our customers are trying to do some of this work. I think the emotionality of any purchase, people get emotional buying iPods and MacBooks. Like every sale and transaction can be emotionally driven, and it's that push and pull of you as the seller and the buyer. I think how the OTAs and some of the online folks win is that I either as a traveler feel emotionally connected, that I feel heard by this brand. So it doesn't mean you know my life story, you know what kind of scotch my partner likes. Like you don't necessarily go that deep. Well, but I think it's travelers feeling heard online through your brand, through your voice, through your marketing, your social media. I think that's how that translates online. And some of the people who are doing well early in that space are some of the high-end luxury properties. They figured that out pretty early of the narrative that they tell to travelers.
Yeah, I think there are definitely two important components. One of them is to make it feel personal. If you can allow people to actually book something that is really personal or that is perceived to be personal for them, then that creates some sort of emotional attachment. And then just good media is always important, good pictures, movies, whatever, because in the end, that's also a big part of what creates those emotions when you look at something online.
So you guys both said the GDS is here to stay, but how do you guys validate that? Because isn't it the consumers that sort of dictate the market? Because GDS has existed because people didn't have access to travel. But if everyone's booking direct, like why would you need it? And thinking of like Uber as an example, right? It existed for like 40, 30 years, but it's the consumers that really dictated the market, and it's the convenience of the booking, right? So I'm kind of applying that same logic to travel.
I mean, Uber hasn't made any money if you've read the earnings reports this week, but I'm gonna let that go.
Well, the thing is, if you say people are going to book direct, then do you think that they're going to book every single product in their itinerary direct with the actual end provider? Or do you think that they will still go to a service that actually allows them to book everything out of one hand? Actually, Booking did a study last year that had the result that 57% of all people that they questioned in actually 65 different countries said that they would like to have one single app or service for all their travel planning and booking needs, which will mean that you would need to have one provider, agent, OTA, tour operator, whatever it is, who can provide you with everything. And this provider then needs access to all the supply. So who is giving them access to all the supply? It's again some sort of consolidator, which might be called GDS or something else.
I mean, there's been a lot of lessons over the years. You know, there's no video stores anymore, and you know the big players are gone. And I think that's a big lesson to these multi-billion-dollar companies, and that's why they have venture arms. That's why they're snapping up smart young companies with big ideas, and that's why they're going to be a big part of it. I'd say that their defensive budget is massive. So it's safe to say don't count them out, because there's a lot of people that could lose a lot of money if they were to go out of business.
Just a related question then. So if you look at what's going on in Asia, we've got across a lot of different industries the rise of the super app. And the super app is Alipay, WeChat Pay. It's basically something that's going to do everything for you, and you download one app and then you have access to your entire life. How do you think travel fits into that, and who are the winners in that?
Well, I think there are two aspects of it that I could think of right now. I mean, one of them is what I mentioned before. People definitely want to book everything out of one hand, even though today they actually often do the opposite, because if you want live bookability, then usually you have to go to various providers, and people do that because they want the transparency and the live bookability, but still they're asking for combined experiences. So that's one aspect of it, and I think that will come. Basically, the whole industry and also the big players are starting to talk about combining all of those products and verticals into one full connected experience. The other thing is just that in travel, you always have a huge marketing problem because your customers will book with you, if you're lucky, maybe once every year. And these are just very, very scarce, very rare and scarce touch points. And it's very difficult to keep up a relation with your customers. So everybody who can actually interact with those customers on a way more frequent basis will have it much easier to acquire the customer at the very exact and right point in time. So general purpose retailers like Amazon, whoever actually interacts with the customer frequently, will just have a pretty huge advantage on the acquisition side once they decide to do that. And so far, that's basically just Google who plays that role towards everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the winner in that space is whoever's talking to us the most. It's no joke that Google's turning on a very robust flights plugin. I think whomever wins there unlocks payments first. And if you're addicted to Amazon Prime like me, that might be your bet. But I think it's WeChat, Alipay, was the unlocking at a very simplistic level of payments, and then you had a bit of a waterfall effect.
Hi, my name is Ahmed. I am not from any technology startup. I am an accountant. I work with Brian. My question is very, from a consumer point of view, I, like this gentleman, use all these Skyscanner, cheap flights, Hopper to scout my flights and my bookings for different hotels and everything. But I have come to terms with the trend that if I need to get the most value out of my booking, I need to go incognito, stop my cookies, and get all that done. And it's a task for me. I mean, I can do my assurance projects very easily, but when I do bookings, it takes a lot of efforts. And because we are at the technology forum, I want to ask that technology is obviously a double-edged sword. How do you guys think that, because I use Skyscanner, but I'm genuinely frustrated if I use my identity and use my Google account, it'll track me and send me ads on each and every app I open, each and every website I open, and I get super frustrated about it. How do you guys think that as startups or as disruptors in this space, you guys are going to handle that? Because one day I will book, say, from your startup, and when I try to look at it and when I try to scout my different trips, I might get pop-up ads and I get frustrated and I stop booking it all.
Manuel, how are you going to disrupt Google?
Well, we're not. But actually, Christian, you do B2C. Maybe you can tell us some things about the marketing.
It's a good question, and obviously, as a marketer, you use different tools all the time, and remarketing is a fantastic tool. You get good conversions, you can track it. Google AdWords, fantastic, right? It's like you put $1, you bid on a keyword, and you see a conversion, or maybe you don't, and then you move it along, right? And it's very different than it used to be in marketing, where you would just put a lot of money in a TV campaign and you aim it at a certain demographic and hope it would actually succeed. I think some of those things that we're seeing in performance marketing, it's losing some of its impact. I think to use an example of what's really changed recently is social media. Paid social is still working, but a lot of companies are dropping their social media departments. Where we're not getting a lot of likes and appreciation for our posts that we put online now. So we have to shift gears, and if that happens, if customers like yourself are getting pissed off and you're going incognito, our results are going to go really bad, and that's going to push us into different marketing channels. And I think that's organically the right way. So if you're angry at that stuff, you're doing the right thing by going incognito, because now we're now one less customer that we can track and know what's happening with. I guess we got to wind up. I think last question. Gentleman at the front.
My name is Peter. Another white elephant in the room is payment providers. I think it's all connected to who's providing you the payment solution. I think with Alipay and WeChat Pay, you kind of alluded to it. Is there a possibility that they will reverse engineer something into our space?
Anything's possible, Peter. I don't know. There's a lot of really smart payments folks in the room. I wouldn't even know where to begin a hypothesis on that.
Me neither. Possible, but I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, reverse engineering and what they do. I think there are some really good companies here in the audience that are offering, split payments or being able to finance your travel. That's really exciting because in the past it was very difficult to do it. Either technology wasn't there or finance providers were a little bit shy in dealing with travel customers because they were higher risk. So I think there's some pretty exciting options out there for customers to split their.
It's actually I think anything's possible when it comes to giant companies like, Amazon not so long ago was selling books, right? Like they were just a book company. Now they're shipping every single thing that I buy typically to my house. They're powering all our servers at Radar. God knows what else they're doing, and the guy Bezos is running the world right now. So yeah.
For the confused people in the room, Amazon used to sell books.
All right, awesome. Is this one working? All right, awesome. Thanks so much to our moderator and to our panelists. I think this was an awesome discussion. Thanks for